Happy Virtual Heritage Day from the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums. Heritage Day is an annual celebration of Platteville's rich history and bright future. And this year, for everyone's health and safety, we're moving the event to virtual space. Between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., we have a series of fabulous broadcasts via Facebook Live for your enjoyment. So stay tuned in all day long for sessions that bring the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums to life.
Hi, my name is Deb Jenny, and I'm the president of the Friends of the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museum. Thank you for your continued support. If you'd like to donate, it's easy on our website, www.mining.jameson.museum.
Today on Virtual Heritage Day, we're going to have music. We will have patriotism, including a reading of the Declaration of Independence by 7 prominent members of our community. We're going to have mining history about the Upper Mississippi Valley Mining District. We're going to have some wonderful remembrances about Rollo Jameson, the one-man historian who the museum is partially named for. And our museum educators will also be doing a virtual Heritage Day craft kit follow-along. So everyone who has purchased their virtual Heritage Day craft kit online can follow along as we show you how to build some toys and crafts. Tune in for 3 sessions today at 10 a.m., noon, and 2 p.m. The 10 a.m. program is going to be focused on a patriotic program, Badger State mining history, and heavy equipment demonstrations. The noon broadcast is going to be focused on the cultural history of southwestern Wisconsin with a variety of demonstrations. And then the 2 p.m. broadcast is going to be focused on the Virtual Heritage Day craft kits. And then stay tuned in the evening for our YouTube channel for a live concert of the Wundo Band. And that will start at 3 p.m.
Welcome to the Virtual Heritage Day at the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums.
The mission of the museum is to continue in the pursuit of excellence in the areas of regional history and mining history. To achieve that purpose, the museums are commissioned to be a custodian of the past, to interpret the rich lead and zinc mining history, as well as to preserve, interpret, and to display all the artifacts that define southwestern Wisconsin. I'm Erik Flesch, Museum Director, and welcome.
Happy Heritage Day at the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museum.
A declaration by the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled July 4, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments, long established, should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuse and usurpation, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute disposition, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient suffrages of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To provide this, let facts be submitted to a candid world.
He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions from within. He is endorsed to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries.
He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has effected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, establishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever.
He has abdicated the government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstance of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioner of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of ages, sexes, and conditions.
Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all of the allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may or of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Happy Heritage Day at the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museum.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of rain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Now you see them. Do you know them? As you look and reverently behold, they were known as doughboys, brave men of armies old. These are soldiers of the past who no longer occupy this place. At times you feel they are here, not so, only photos of a faded face. Do pray you never need encounter the bomb, gas, or gun, and never know the hardships of those who fought the Hun. Be thankful for their courage and all that they have done, for in France in 1918 the Great War of the Doughboys won. Beautiful for spacious skies and the waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crowned thy earth from sea to shining sea.
This is the Rock School building. Built in 1860, it is the city of Platteville's oldest existing public school. Happy Heritage Day from the Mining and Rollo Jameson Museums. I'm Erik Flesch, the museum director, and I wanted to share with you my favorite museum artifact. This diorama was made in the 1960s by the first museum director, Tom Hendrickson Jr. It's a true work of art and also a great work of science and public history. We are here at the historic Mining Museum in Platteville, Wisconsin. Founded in 1964, the Platteville Mining Museum has welcomed hundreds of thousands of visitors to discover the pioneer heritage of southwestern Wisconsin. The Driftless area is a region in the upper Mississippi River Valley. The southern Driftless constitutes what's known today as the tri-state area. Here, a way of life on the land has included not only agriculture, but also the rocks and minerals underneath our feet. This model here shows a package of rocks in our nook of the Driftless area, starting with the St. Peter's Sandstone Formation, moving through the Platteville Formation, the Decorah, and the Galena formations. And these are the rocks that we see in the road cuts that look so stunningly beautiful when you take a road trip through our hilly part of Wisconsin. What a lot of people don't know is that these rocks are also home to one of the world's ore deposit types called Mississippi Valley type deposits. They are sulfides of lead and zinc hosted in carbonate rocks like limestones and dolastones. Now, the rush on lead in the 1820s was of such national significance that it might best be compared with the gold rush of 1849. Until the 1830s, the United States primarily imported its lead from England. The problem with that is that the young United States really required strategic mineral independence from other nations to really realize its full potential. To have a strong source of lead really meant a strong source of long-term stability for the government, a strong treasury, and a strong Department of War. These ore deposits are found expressing themselves in two primary ways. First is as crevice deposits, And those were the earliest deposits that were explored for starting in the 1820s, led to a major rush on the lead minerals. But as technology increased, it was possible to search out deeper deposits. Lower down in the stratigraphy are found so-called ramp and flat deposits, or pitch and flat. And these pitch and flats are host not only to lead, but also zinc minerals. And so from the lead mineralization in the pre-Civil War period through the zinc minerals of the 20th century, the pursuit of Mississippi Valley type ore deposits sustained our region all the way until the last mine closed in our area in 1979. Here we are at another of the stunning handmade dioramas made by Tom Hendrickson Jr. This is a mill. Here we show the trucks exiting an incline from one of our local mines, and then the dump truck brings the ore down to a hopper where it's conveyed to a crusher. This diorama shows what happened here in the Upper Mississippi Valley District to the ore minerals after it left the mine site. It just so happened that this ore requires a significant amount of processing before a concentrate can be sent to the smelter. There are more mining stories to be told yet here in Platteville. Those include the things that came before us and the things that came after the creation of the Mining Museum in the 1960s. This includes the period that immediately followed mining. For example, in the 1990s in Wisconsin, we had a period of reclamation. In Platteville, the city that trained the mining engineer from 1906 through the 1980s at Wisconsin's mining school, which eventually merged with the Wisconsin Normal School, the teaching college, to become the UW Platteville, eventually also trained the reclamation scientists. So meanwhile, many great mining engineers continue to practice in mineral districts all around the world. And some other Platteville-trained engineers worked in other aspects of the mine life cycle, helping to close mines and helping to reclaim sites after the mining period. Just as the mining story has evolved, so too does the museum evolve. And we continue to create new exhibits while also preserving our heritage and these exhibits that tell the story of things that came before us. We look forward in the coming years to completing a comprehensive restoration of the Rock School building and to creating some new exhibits that complement our existing exhibits that tell the rest of the story. One project slated for the summer of 2020 is a recoating of the metal roof of the 1860 Rock School building. The metal roof, which is described as turn metal, is leak-free. And so, as part of our scheduled maintenance, it's time to recoat the roof, and we will use an elastomeric acrylic paint. And this is funded by a 2020 City of Platteville CIP budget. We also are grateful to the Platteville Community Fund for recently awarding us a grant to install preservation-appropriate gutters and downspouts to the eaves in order to safely whisk water away from the foundation of the building. Also, we would like to thank Claire Bank for a $5,000 gift for the completion of tuck pointing of the foundation level in order to help waterproof the building and keep water from entering the basement. I'm pleased to report that both the 1860s Rock School building and the 1905 Hanmer Robbins School building are both currently in the process of being nominated for the state and federal registers of historic places. This is a critical first step to comprehensive restoration of these buildings. And as part of our upcoming master plan, these buildings will once again be filled with life, not only for fantastic exhibits that preserve our heritage, but also for programming in the realm of arts, culture, and perhaps most importantly, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, that's so important to not only intergenerational lifelong learning opportunities, but also to training the next generation of children for stewarding the environment and for stewarding the technologies of our civilization.
Welcome to the Mining and Ronald Jameson Museum. We are in our 1845 Bevins mine. We're going to take a quick tour of the mine and the hoist house. To start with, we are about 50 feet down. 50 to 60 feet is common for lead mines in this region, so it's not terribly far underground. We are surrounded by Ordovician dolomite. And this dolomite is very similar to limestone. It's very grainy. It's from the Ordovician period, which does make it between 400 and 500 million years old. This was once a tropical sea. And because of that, we do have a fossil. I believe is a receptaculite. A receptaculite is an algae, so we don't have an animal fossil in here as far as we know. Lead mining in the upper Mississippi Valley really began with the First Nations. They would not dig a mine 50, 60 feet down, but they would dig into the side of a hill. They would create trenches. They would also create holes that we think of as, or know of as digs. And they are mining the galena lead ore. They would smelt it, burning off the sulfur, and then they would take that lead and create art, trinkets, and they would use it for trade and art. Early Europeans, including fur traders and explorers, came to this region and soon discovered that there was plenty of lead ore here, or galena. With that, more and more Americans and eventually a lot of immigrants coming from Western Europe. Around here, we're very familiar with the Cornish immigrant story. Cornish had been mining in Cornwall, England for centuries. And so when they came here, they brought with them plenty of skill. They were able to mine deeper underground, like 50, 60 feet. They were able to support the mine that they're in using timber and different ways of mining to create support structures. They also used waste rock. If it didn't have ore in it, they could use that to support the mine. The Cornish also brought the windlass with them, which allowed the miners to get in and out of the mine more easily and also to bring their ore out. The windlass works a lot like getting water from a well. And you just crank the sides and it would wrap up the rope and up would come the bucket. Once a miner has a full bucket of lead ore, he will take it out of the mine using a windlass. From here, he could smelt it himself with his own makeshift furnace, or he could sell it to a smelter, and the smelter will take care of the smelting process for him. After it's been smelted, the lead will be formed into a pig of lead, or ingot, and from here it'll be shipped off to be used for things like pipe, paint, shot or bullets. It was used in toys and in glass, amongst other things. After the Civil War, the lead in this region is dwindling and the demand lessens. But the miners knew that there was another ore here, and that's zinc. Zinc sphalerite and zinc smithsonite. So beginning in the 1860s, zinc is king, and companies are established to create large zinc mines. In some of these zinc mines, they did also mine the lead ore. Zinc in this region is 100 to 300 feet on average. So to get that far down, you're using drills to dig down. Also, once you're that far underground, you're under the water table. So it's not just dripping from time to time like it does in a lead mine, but in a zinc mine, the water will be rushing in and it has to be pumped out. Tools, the drill and the pump, these are also tools that the Cornish would have been well versed in. The mucker was tasked with filling the ore cans. When these ore cans were full, they were between 1,000 and 1,500 pounds. So it's about the weight of a small elephant. Because they're so heavy, we need different tools to help get them out of the mine. One of the things that they'd have to use is a track or a tramway. Starting out, a miner might be tasked with pushing it along the tramway to the shaft, where it would take it to the surface. Later, they would switch to mules, and then even later, they would switch to a locomotive or train. Today at the museum, you can ride a 1931 WHITCOMB locomotive mine train. Once the ore can is at the bottom of the shaft, it has to be taken to the surface, and it will be pulled up using a hoist. The hoist is housed in the hoist house, also called a head frame. Once the ore can is pulled to the surface, it will be dumped out onto the grizzly bars. The grizzly men will use hammers to break the larger pieces of waste rock away from the zinc ore. The waste rock will be thrown into a waste rock pile. It is garbage. The zinc ore and any smaller bits of waste rock will be broken up and they will fall between the grizzly bars. From here, it may be picked up by a truck and taken to a mill where they will further crush it, jig it, and begin a flotation process which uses chemicals to extract the zinc mineral from the ore. From here, it will be taken via train to places like LaSalle, Illinois, where it can be made into zinc oxide and zinc metals, where we would then use them for galvanizing other metals and make them rust-proof or rust-resistant. You find zinc oxide in your sunscreen, for example. It's also used in the process to make rayon and other metals. The last heyday in this region for zinc mining was really around the early 1900s. World War I created a demand for zinc. World War II did as well. By 1979, the very last zinc mine closed.
Its 1931 Whitcomb locomotive was originally used right here in the Upper Mississippi Valley Mining District in the Blackstone Mine, a zinc mine operated by the Vinegar Hill Zinc Company near Shullsburg, Wisconsin. The locomotive was used to haul zinc ore through 7 miles of underground passages from 1931 until the late 1950s. In 1960, the train was purchased by the son of a miner and owner of a local trucking company, Andy Banfield. In 1974, the museum approached the community for funds to acquire the train, and thanks to the Platteville Optimist Club, the museum gave the train a new home. Under the leadership of museum director Tom Hendrickson Jr., museum staff began a full restoration and mechanical upgrade. Museum employee Steve Cleefish, who would eventually take the helm of the museum for many years, did the hands-on work to get the train back to running condition. The original 6-cylinder Waukesha engine was replaced with a 1978 Chevrolet 4.1-liter straight-six engine. Ore car chassis were bought, and the new car bodies were designed and fabricated right here at the museum. In 1976, the Mining Museum reopened the 1845 Bevins mine to the public. Staff members continued to hand-build the railroad track, 1 railroad tie and 1 train car worth of gravel at a time. and by May 1978, the train ride was ready for visitors. Since then, the train has given over 300,000 museum visitors a ride around the museum's campus. Today, visitors continue to enjoy a ride on the mine train as part of their museum experience.
Bill Van DEEST and Happy Heritage Day. So the museum has actually two dumpters, one with an engine that may someday run and one without an engine. One's in front of the museum, one's in back of the museum. They're in their original factory color. When you come to the museum, you can take a look and you can actually climb up to the seating area and have your picture taken. We're standing either in the front or the back of a KOEHRING dump door, which was made in Milwaukee, and the line of dump doors was made between the 1930s and the 1950s. And this particular one served in Cuba City and was finally used by the Landsbergs here in town. This is where it's dumped. And underneath here is a solid casting for the entire axis. So the drivetrain is here, and if you look here, this piece goes all the way from one wheel to the other. It's just a giant casting, and then the differential is inside. And directly sitting on top of that is the bed. There are no springs involved here. The bed is loaded up with either ore or mine waste, or sometimes used in the mine. And it dumps right in front of me. It dumps in this direction. It sort of rolls forward on these curved rockers right on this big, solid, heavy piece of steel. Which is not, of course, it's not quite solid, but it does have support bars in it. Because there's a lot of weight right on this axle. So imagine the bed full of ore. All of this weight on these two wheels, which do not steer. And how does it get here? Well, let's take a quick look. And we've got a steering wheel and the driver who's pointed in the direction that it dumps. But the steering is done with these wheels. So is this the front or is that the front? I suppose you could call this the front because this is where the lights are. But if you notice up at the seat, if the driver is driving it in the direction facing me, he's got to turn his neck around and look backwards. It's got 3 speeds forward, 3 speeds backward. And the skill on this dumpster is to pull the latch at the right time so that this rocks forward and dumps the contents. We're looking at the second carrying dumpster, and this is out in back of the museum, and it doesn't have an engine, but one could be placed in it. And you can see that it's steerable with these two wheels. And now we can see a much better view of where the driver sits. And we can see up at the top the latch key that he can pull to dump the load. Now what's really interesting is when the load flips forward, we have some safety chains to make sure it doesn't fly off. And this bar goes into the position down here where there's a big spring. So there are 2 giant springs that retard the energy of the flipped bed. Now really, for the driver, the main problem is when this bed bounces back after the load is delivered. And what we've seen is that it's supposedly really hard on your back. Now there is a YouTube video at the Old Construction and Mining Equipment Show in New Athens, Ohio. If you Google or go to YouTube and type in KOEHRING or KOEHRING dumpster, and KOEHRING is K-O-E-H-R-I-N-G, and it's pronounced KOEHRING. And they have a 2019 video of the same machine in much better shape, but it has a top on it, so obviously people wouldn't be hit with falling shale or falling mine waste. And they point out that the driver now has the seat belt. But these machines are interesting because there's no hydraulics, there's no power steering. In fact, the only real electric power is to the lights and to the starting motor. And they used a diesel, so it has 2 big, heavy batteries to get it started in the morning. Other than that, it's all mechanical. So both these machines were refinished last year. They were first sandblasted and then painted by J&S Mobile Blasting. Joe Hayes from Benton, and they did a great job on it with the funding from the Platteville Community Fund, which made all the difference in the world.
And over the years, me and my neighbors have been bringing gas engines down to the Rollo Jameson Museum for the Heritage Day program. So I'm going to give you a little history on some of the hit and miss engines. This is a model NC built in 1929, and it's a 2-horse engine. made by the Fuller & Johnson Manufacturing Company in Madison. The Madison Plow Company started in about 1880. They made farm machinery, corn planters, horse mowers, plows, grain drills, harrows. In about 1902, they entered into the gas engine business. Most work on the farm was all hand intensive those days. Everything was done mainly with horses. The gas engine helped mechanize the farm to a point. The gas engines were used to pump water, run a washing machine, a line shaft, grind corn, tasks that had to be done by hand previously. Speeds up to a certain number of RPMs, and then when it slows down, that's when it fires again to speed back up. And you see it belted, there's a belt pulley on it, so it was belted to grind corn or shell corn or to run a belt anyway. This engine here was made by International Harvester from around 1880 to 1933. This is a model NC built in 1929, and it's a 2-horse engine. International Harvester was formed in 1902 by the merger of the Plano Manufacturing Company and Plano, Illinois. They had names for their engines. The early models, there was the Mogul, the Titan, the Tom Thumb, the Famous, the Victor. Up until, those were produced up until 1917. In 1917, they built the Model M in a 1.5 horsepower, a 3-horse, a 6-horse, and a 10-horse. And they built those up until 1937. And they were so dependable and so well liked that there were more Model M's built from 1917 to 1937 than all the other gas engines of all the other manufacturers in the country put together. This is the last model, the Model LB from 1941 to 1948. And this is a 1945 model. One of the big differences in these newer models, on this, it's got an oil bath system, just about like an engine nowadays. There's a reservoir of oil, and it automatically oils the valves and things versus a drip oiler there. And then this model is one of a very few made by International that there's a pump jack right to the motor. Otherwise, generally the pump jacks were separate. And this is an A.Y. McDonald pump from Dubuque. And when the engine is running, you engage it with this lever, and it pumps water.
Yeah, that's what you're from, isn't it? Your machine, yeah.
And when I'm down to the museum, I usually tell people, you know, the water table is high and there's a mine under here, so we're pumping the water right up out of the ground. Drip oiler over there. It pumps the oil up and it drips down in this leather tray here with the felt in there, and that soaks the oil up, and then it drips down to oil the valves here. And then any excess oil gets in this and runs out this spigot here. So,
One more time, I'm so sorry.
the valve gathers down in here and it drains out this oil. LB model International was the only model that had a throttle on it, that you could open the engine up to a faster speed or a lower speed. Most of the other engines just ran at one speed constantly. This is a magneto. That's what provides the fire for the spark plug. This is the flywheel that you start it with. This is the belt pulley. Gas tank is under here. This is the choke. This is the needle valve that controls the amount of gas that gets to the engine. Drain plug is very important those days. They didn't have antifreeze. If you didn't drain them in the wintertime, they would freeze up and break the tank, so you'd want to drain the water out. But in my dad's day, they used to put old cylinder oil in where the water is, and that way it would take the heat away, but the oil would never freeze and ruin the tank. Spark plug, here's your valves, and then it automatically, in this model, pumps the oil up into this felt that's here and soaks up with oil, and then it drips down and keeps the valves oiled up.
Down in the gold sign.
In constant sorrow, I am a man. Constant sorrow, I think of Almighty. I get farewell to old, don't see no present. He was born and raised. For 6 long years I've been in trouble. Oh,
It don't hurt anymore. All my teardrops have dried. No more walking the floor with that burning inside. Just to think it could be. Time has opened the door, and at last I am free. I don't hurt anymore. So used to deny I wanted to die the day you said we were through, but now that I find you're out of my mind, I can't believe that it's true. I've forgotten somehow. Don't hurt anymore. All my teardrops have dried. No more walking the road with that burning inside. Just to think it could be. Time has opened the door, and at last I am free. I don't hurt the day you said we were through, but now that I find you're out of my mind, I can't believe that it's true. I've forgotten somehow that I did so before, and it's wonderful now. I don't hurt anymore, 'cause I use Wonderlust now. I don't be glad anymore. People say a man made out of mud, a poor man's made of muscle and blood and skin and bone, a mind that's weak and a back that's strong.
You know, 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older, and keep her in the street. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go.
I owe my soul to the company store. Picked up my shovel, went to the mine. I worked 16 tons of her number 9 roll. The straw ball said with,
Bless my soul. 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older, and people in the street. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go.
I owe my soul to the company store. I was born one morning, just drizzling in rain. Fighting and trouble are my middle name. I was raised in a Cambridge, I know my love line. Ain't no high-tone woman gonna push me around.
You know, 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older, and people in the street. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go.
I owe my soul to the company store. If you see me coming, you better step aside. A lot of men did, a lot of men died, with one fist of iron and the other of steel. still, if the right one don't get you, the left one will.
You rode 16 times, and what do you get? Another day older, and deeper in the pain. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go.
I owe my soul to the company store.
It's all-American food enjoyed over good times. It's always made fresh root beer and simple pleasures. A place to get treated and get treated well. It's iconic burgers and hand-breaded chicken tenders. It's more than a place to have a great meal. It's your local A&W.